Humanity is a cancerous tumor in its own body. Is your love for humanity enough to save it? Humanity is the disease, Inferno is the cure. In our videos, the point has repeatedly been raised that every fragment of the universe modulates its oscillations, and that if there is no oscillation, in fact there is no fragment. Official science shares this opinion, but does not agree with it on the part of man. It believes that man has no oscillations. This disagreement is expressed in the refusal to study human biofield physiology. Biofields carry in them the human psyche, which cannot be recorded on the bodily structures of a human, since the volumes of information that make up the psyche require a higher frequency range, which makes the biofield imperceptible to the human eye. However, refusing to study human biofield physiology, science falls into schizophrenia, as it becomes a carrier of mutually exclusive opinions. On the one hand, it admits that everything in nature emits certain oscillations. On the other hand, it does not agree with the fact that a person emits oscillations, thereby separating a person from the general processes in the universe. On this basis, it is easy to consider oneself as able to act in any way without repercussions. And since everything in the universe emits oscillations, this means that the fragment of it, which is the planet Earth, also emits oscillations which carry in them certain algorithms and information, the components of which, among others, are the entire cultural and egregorial heritage of mankind throughout all generations with no exception, including the heritage of deceased civilizations. And the totality of oscillations inherent in the planet Earth is called the Noosphere. And everything that happens in the world of people happens with the consent of not only the global mafia, but also of all hierarchical levels in the universe up to the creator. That is, the inconsistent to life plans of the global mafia are either not implemented at all, only partially implemented, or are corrected from above in the process of their implementation to the extent of discrepancy with hierarchically higher algorithms, and in strict correlation with the measure of people's previousness. That is to say, one should neither idealize the power of the global mafia nor underestimate it. What is happening in the world now, with the agreement of all hierarchical levels of the universe, is the coronavirus and all the events associated with it, such as quarantines, shutdowns of production, closure of state borders, and so on. There are several versions of the origin of the coronavirus. The first version is neutral. A bat virus was somehow transmitted to animals used in Chinese traditional cuisine, armadillos, snakes, etc., and then to humans. This is not very consistent with the fact that the pneumonia virus COVID-19 has significant differences from the animal coronavirus. The second version, heavily supported by the United States. The virus was developed at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which is also called the Virus Library, and then it leaked. Without completely discounting this option, it should be noted that although it is able to explain the infection of local residents in Wuhan, it does not explain the almost instantaneous spread of the virus to the United States, Italy, and other countries at the early stage of the epidemic. Finally, the third version. The virus was created in the USA. Actually, there is no conspiracy here. It was, in fact, created there in 2015, and the scientific press wrote openly about it. A successful laboratory experiment to create a hybrid form of bat coronavirus that can infect humans has raised fears among scientists about the unpredictable consequences of a virus mutation leak. The discovery and the controversy surrounding this were reported by Nature News. At the time, American biologists created a chimera from the Chinese horseshoe bat virus known as SHC-014. Its surface protein was transferred to the SARS virus living in the lungs of experimental mice to simulate human infection. Scientists have proven that the SHC-014 virus already possesses all the necessary tools for binding to a key receptor of human cells. The experiment confirmed the hypothesis of the possibility of direct human infection with bat coronaviruses. From 2005 to 2012, the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recorded 1,059 reports of laboratory toxin leak incidents. A time lag of 4 years explains a lot. For example, why in 2017 the US presidential administration worked out a scenario for the epidemic, and in 2019 NATO spent a third of its scientific expenses on studying the chemical and biological threat. This is 7 times higher than the level of past years. The Japanese point of view is extremely interesting. TV Asahi released a program with Japanese and Taiwanese epidemiologists who concluded that the tracks led to the United States, where there are all 5 types of coronavirus, while in Wuhan there is only one. A Taiwanese specialist noted that in August 2019, a wave of deaths from pulmonary pneumonia swept across the United States, which was then associated with the consequences of using vaporizers. After all, the exact location of the new virus leak was the leading military biolaboratory in Fort Detrick, Maryland. In August 2019, the New York Times reported that the laboratory had closed after a problem with the disposal of dangerous microbes, and then a wave of vape pneumonia broke out. Thus, the version develops something like this. COVID-19 was created in the United States artificially, but its leak occurred by accident. If we accept this fact, bearing in mind the period from August 2019, it becomes clear why the Chinese and Italian varieties of the virus have different aggressiveness. Over the past months, the virus mutated in different countries in different ways, developing separate paths of evolution. It is clear that the current outbreak of a new type of coronavirus will remain with the person, like other viral diseases that appeared earlier, forever. Governments now need to accept as a given the existence of the virus among humanity and teach themselves and people to live in its presence. So it was during past epidemics with other viruses. Nevertheless, viruses are not the main problem of mankind and not even the main threat. The chief problem of mankind is the global environmental crisis. Its main reason is the mentality of the vast majority of the representatives of mankind, indistinguishable from the mentality of herd pack monkeys. Where they run, there they mess. If the crisis is not resolved, the current global civilization will perish. This is completely obvious. This type of mentality expressed itself as an influential bourgeois capitalist system in which money is a value of the highest importance, which rules everything and everyone with rare exceptions. The desire to improve one's status in the herd pack hierarchy through the achievement of commercial success generates a consumption race in which natural and social resources are uselessly ground up and which produces everything that makes up environmental problems at all scales and levels. This is a long-standing problem. The ringleaders and overlords of the biblical project tried to prevent it, for which purpose they created and promoted Marxism, its teachings on the world socialist revolution and the transition to a socialist economic structure, a planned economy that would provide everyone with reasonable sufficiency of consumption, eliminating the race of uncontrolled consumption, which is a socio-cultural generator of the global environmental crisis. However, the Marxist project did not succeed because Bolshevism, headed by J.V. Stalin, put the words socialism and communism not in the sense that remained in the subtext or the defaults of the true Russophobic Marxists K. Marx, F. Engels, L. D. Bronstein, Trotsky, N. S. Khrushchev, and many others. Therefore, the problem worsened. The following attempts to resolve it by the ringleaders and the overlords of the biblical project include two streams of actions: substitution of the biomass, which carries a liberal bourgeois culture in the states of Europe, Australia, the USA, and Canada, with an immigrant population, refugees from areas where social catastrophes are deliberately created that are not assimilated into traditional liberal bourgeois cultures, as well as stimulating the biological degradation of traditional societies committed to liberal values. A proposal to all countries to move towards a sustainable development concept. The first stream of actions we observe in Europe, in the USA and Canada, and in Australia. The second stream of actions does not fall into the attention of the majority, so it needs to be highlighted in particular. In June 1992, the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development was held in Rio de Janeiro. 179 states took part, and the transition to the concept of sustainable development was proclaimed. To implement such a transition, it was required to form a set of characteristic statistics that would describe the life of the biosphere socio-economic system in each region of the planet that has a natural originality. To form a set of criteria that would allow us to assess the compliance of these statistics and their trends with the sustainable development concept. To formulate scientific and methodological support for public administration and business administration in line with the concept of sustainable development. To expand the training of managers for all areas of activity on the basis of this scientific and methodological support. To eliminate from the sphere of public administration and business management all those who steer contrary to the concept of sustainable development and its continuous growth. 28 years have passed since then, but nothing from this list has been achieved by scientific officialdom and politicians of all countries of the world. The resolution of the UN General Assembly of September 25, 2015, Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, is another one of the proposals of the global mafia to switch to a different way of life, of global civilization, and a different nature of relations between states. But, even to this day, these are empty words, since the scientific and methodological support of public administration and management in business has not been developed in accordance with the proclaimed tasks and has not been included in the educational standards of universal and higher professional education, primarily managerial, political, and economic, in even a single state in the world. If the world behind the scenes, as a subject of global power, does not want to be purged by the Earth's noosphere, along with several billion humanoid apes, according to the organization of their psyche, which did not reach the level of human due to the policy of the world backstage itself, then it must itself, or by other means, purge the planet of this excess of humanoid apes, who themselves are prepared to destroy both themselves and the planet's biosphere with their lifestyle and mindlessly unwilling reluctance to change it. Moreover, this cleansing or purge should be proactive, since none of the representatives of the world behind the scenes wishes to die in a global catastrophe brought about by the subhuman population or the noosphere of the Earth. The world behind the scenes has already notified all interested parties about this on the Georgia Guidestones. Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. Guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. Unite humanity with a living new language. Rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. Protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. Let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Avoid petty laws and useless officials. Balance personal rights with social duties. Prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite. Be not a cancer on the earth. Leave room for nature. Leave room for nature. Next, a purely practical question arises. How to purge or cleanse the planet of several billion humanoids who do not heed anything, neither the pressure of the stream of events of life, nor any enlightening words. A world nuclear war with the use of toxic substances is not suitable for solving this problem, because it would aggravate the already dangerous global environmental crisis so that the members of the world backstage would have to escape Earth for some place more suitable for life, where there are no monkeys with nuclear bombs and highly developed chemistry. What remains in this case? A pandemic, or a series of several pandemics. Pandemics can kill billions of people, for which the infection must either generate high statistics of infectiousness and mortality, or with high infectivity affect reproductive systems, leaving the infected with a high probability of infertility. The victims of pandemics will be, first of all, biologically weak people, the deaths of whom, as imagined by many, will genetically improve humanity and thereby compensate for the deterioration of human genetics by the European medical tradition and lifestyle of the global consumption civilization. As a result of a pandemic or a series of pandemics, the prevailing global economic structure and its organizational and technological complex, which gave rise to the current global environmental crisis, will collapse. In the changed situation, new opportunities will open up for promoting a culture of post-pandemic humanity tending towards a dominant mentality that ensures life in accordance with principles that exclude the resumption of the global biosphere social ecological crisis. As a result, firstly, the global environmental crisis may be resolved through a pandemic or a series of pandemics. Second, everything can be done without violating the laws of the Noosphere, Nravius ethical in essence, since monkey-like people work towards their own annihilation in which they can involve others and descendants. Third, everything can be done anonymously, since it is difficult to identify the real source of pandemics, not to mention the fact that publicly announced reliable information can be drowned in an abundance of plausible false options, or by writing off authorship as fictions of maniacs committed to the theory of a world conspiracy. Fourth, in addition, there is always the opportunity to accuse any state or public organization of creating the bioagent that triggered the pandemic and releasing it into the public, if it is considered to be reasonably consistent with the global political motives. After all, the biological species of Homo sapiens has a completely clear purpose for its being, predetermined for it as a biological species from above. When your Lord said to the angels, "I am placing a successor on earth," they said, "Will you place in it someone who will cause corruption in it and shed blood, while we declare your praises and sanctify you?" He said, "I know what you do not know." But alas, the vast majority of people shy away from this most important mission, being carried away by passions for various forms of physiological and psychological pleasure. And actually, if we consider the biosphere of planet Earth as a system corresponding to the promotion of a determined idea from the Almighty, then it will also help to eliminate those who lead an unprovious lifestyle, those whose immune systems are weakened through addictions, those with depleted biofields, and biofield immunity is the most powerful resistance factor, although the European medical tradition does not know or want to know anything about it. One who is experiencing constant depression and stress, resentment, and other psychologically enslaving tension. And the ringleaders of the biblical project also manage the global power. You just need to observe the beginning of this objective process and begin subjective governance over it. You can take this line from the Quran as a warning to all of humanity. By time, the human being is in loss. The word was realized against most of them, for they do not believe. We placed shackles around their necks, up to their chins, so they are stiff-necked, and we placed a barrier in front of them, and a barrier behind them, and we have enshrouded them, so they cannot see. It is the same for them, whether you warn them or do not warn them, they will not believe. Praise be to God who created the heavens and the earth, and made the darkness and the light. Yet those who disbelieve ascribe equals to their Lord. It is He who created you from clay, then decided a term determined by Him. Yet you doubt. He is God in the heavens and the earth. He knows what you keep secret and what you make public, and He knows what you earn. Not one of the Lord's signs comes to them, but they turn away from it. They deny the truth when it has come to them, but soon will reach them the news of what they used to ridicule. Have they not considered how many generations we destroyed before them? We had established them on earth more firmly than we established you, and we sent the clouds pouring down abundant rain on them, and we made rivers flow beneath them, but we destroyed them for their sins, and established other civilizations after them. There are two ways these problems can be solved. Mass humanization of humanoid species due to the personal development of people, and above all, children, since the planet's noospheric algorithm initiates a pandemic itself, either through the biosphere or through scientific and technological progress in the course of scientific research of microorganisms and gene modifications or some other way. In addition, glaciers are melting, and from their glacial waters, the ancient spores of bacteria and viruses that have been preserved in them for several millennia re-enter in the modern biosphere. What can come from this? The global mafia is ready to organize a pandemic as a tool to radically reduce the number of monkeys by using corrupt scientists either openly or blindly, and the zombies from Al-Qaeda, ISIS, or something else can become distributors of bioagents that can cause a pandemic. With an incubation period of several weeks and the existing passenger air traffic, it will be practically impossible to prevent a pandemic, and those who are needed by the periphery of the world backstage will be vaccinated in advance and provided with effective drugs. Not to mention that they use a different, so-called esoteric system of healthcare based on principles that are different from the system-forming principles of the European medical tradition, which is practically uncontested, dominant throughout the world, incapable of healthcare, technical and technological in its essence, able to somehow work with symptoms, but not with the human organism, not with a person as an individual. Logically following what has been said, coronavirus is hardly a fake, as many are inclined to believe, but there is also an artificially inflated panic. In Italy, the mortality rate exceeded 12%, which means it is hardly a fake, although it is quite possible to inflate a panic with the help of the media and bloggers. There is a real threat of bioterrorism and a real threat of leaks of combat bioagents from laboratories because of negligence that bioterrorists can cause through manipulation. People in general are unhappy with the quarantine. Take Russia, for example, where citizens complain about the actions of the government, considering them to be unnecessary. But in relation to the real threat of bioterrorism, the actions of the Russian government in connection with the threat or under the pretext of the coronavirus pandemic are useful, as they are a field test of the efficiency of public administration systems and the life opportunities of citizens in a potentially catastrophic pandemic. If, however, there are reliable reports that one of the consequences of infection with COVID-19, regardless of the actual statistics on the severity of the disease and mortality associated with it, is infertility, then measures aimed at containing a pandemic in Russia are more than justified, despite the fact that the country may suffer very severe economic damage, because these measures are aimed at preventing the demographic catastrophe that the COVID-19 pandemic could cause. Nevertheless, what really happens is a special topic for analytics, as there are two components in the official information policy of the state: bringing determined information, both reliable and false, to the general public, concealment of certain reliable information from the public for reasons including avoidance of panic. But besides the general media, there is the internet, on which independent citizens publish anything they want. And besides them, there are also professional bloggers who either fulfill certain social orders for hire, or who are manipulated by both domestic and foreign competent services or their peripheries. Consequently, analytics on the topic of coronavirus is not a topic that should be trusted immediately. But the world behind the scenes began to prepare this scenario in advance, first informationally, through the subordinate institutes of cinema, fictional literature, and so on. One of these is the successful American author Dan Brown. His novel Inferno was first published on May 14, 2013, and became a worldwide bestseller in the same year. The plot of the book describes the story of the scientist billionaire Zobrist, who came to the conclusion that the current population growth rate of the planet will inevitably end in a global catastrophe caused by lack of resources. To save the future of mankind, a scientist who is an ardent admirer of Dante's work invented a virus that can quickly reduce the excess part of the population. Throughout the novel, the reader, following how Professor Langdon and the nurse Sienna, who saved him, tried to prevent a catastrophe, are simultaneously immersed in a detailed description of all the horrors that will begin in the near future on our planet due to lack of resources. All this is projected into the reader's mind through the symbolism and imagery of Botticelli's Map of Hell, illustrating part of Dante's Divine Comedy. As a result, the majority of Dan Brown's fans already come to the last pages of the novel with the thought that the scientist, in fact, is not a villain, but a real savior, and they begin to sincerely empathize with the idea that he is promoting. Reformatted readers are also waiting for their figurative happy end in the form that Zobrist's plans are being translated into reality, the virus is spreading, and the main characters themselves in the end agree that it will be better for humanity. In addition, it turns out that since the scientist loved people so much, he decided to reduce the population by not killing anyone, but by rendering a third of all humanity barren with the help of the virus he created. That is, Dan Brown's novel Inferno confronts the reader with the false choice of two evils: a global catastrophe, or a sharp decline in the population, and leads the reader to the feeling that there is no alternative other than the second way in its mild form, through sterilization, not through murder. According to the plot of the novel, the virus is released and infects all of humanity, causing a random third of the population to become sterile. Thus, the infertility virus will stop the overpopulation of the planet and save civilization from death, essentially reducing its number to 500 million people.